Welcome, gamers! Can the Helio G100 actually handle PC gaming? Today on Vanzee Gaming, we're putting this popular mid-range chipset to the ultimate test. We've lined up a massive list of 30 games to run on the GameHub Emulator. From highly optimized Lite versions of big titles to heavy hitters like Tomb Raider and Dark Souls 2, we're going to see what this silicon is truly capable of. We'll be using the best system drivers and configurations to find the perfect balance. Let's jump straight into the action. The Killing Antidote brings some intense third-person action to our test. Running on the Helio G100, the game holds a very impressive 40 to 50 FPS. It looks sharp and plays fluidly. Make sure to fine-tune your internal resolution to maintain this high performance during heavy combat. GTA 4 Lite is surprisingly smooth on GameHub. This chipset manages to hit a solid 50 FPS, making Liberty City feel alive without the usual lag. To keep the driving experience snappy, don't forget to adjust your container presets to find the sweet spot for your specific device. Lara's 2013 adventure is a total win for this hardware. Tomb Raider runs at a glorious 60 FPS, providing a console-like experience on your phone. This silicon really handles the island's environment well. Be sure to optimize your graphical profile to keep those cinematic moments flawless. Experience the thrill of Formula 1 at full speed. F1 2013 reaches a perfect 60 FPS on this processor, making every turn feel incredibly responsive. To ensure no frame drops during rainy races, experiment with different system driver settings available within the GameHub menu. Survival horror in the tropics never looked better. Dead Island stays at a very playable 40 FPS on this chipset. Smashing zombies feels heavy and satisfying. Finding the right balance in your setup will help keep the open-world exploration smooth as you navigate the infested resort. Crysis used to melt PCs, but this hardware runs it at 50 FPS on GameHub. It's an incredible sight to see. To keep the nanosuit action flowing, try tweaking your rendering resolution to ensure the heavy physics and jungle environments don't cause any unnecessary stutters. LEGO Marvel Superheroes is pure fun and runs at a locked 60 FPS. This silicon breezes through the blocky version of New York City. Since the performance headroom is so high, feel free to push your settings a bit to enjoy the colorful visuals and fast-paced hero swapping. GTA 5 Lite is another impressive result, hitting a steady 50 FPS. This processor makes roaming Los Santos feel very fluid compared to the standard version. To avoid any pop-in while driving fast, make sure to optimize your memory allocation in the emulator's configuration. High-speed chases and Need for Speed Most Wanted 2012 stay between 30 to 40 FPS. The sense of speed is great on this chipset. For a more consistent race against the cops, don't hesitate to lower some post-processing effects like motion blur or high-quality shadows. Castlevania Lords of Shadow 2 looks stunning and runs at a smooth 50 FPS. This hardware handles the gothic combat with ease. To keep the boss fights feeling epic and responsive, check your CPU affinity settings to ensure GameHub is using all available power efficiently. Just Cause 2 is the king of chaos, and it runs at a flawless 60 FPS here. Blowing things up on this silicon is incredibly satisfying and smooth. Be sure to fine-tune your box 86 settings to keep the frame rate locked even when multiple explosions fill the screen. DMC Devil May Cry brings stylish action at around 35 FPS. This processor keeps Dante's combos feeling snappy enough for a good gameplay flow. To keep the frame rate from dipping during busy scenes, adjust your internal graphical presets to prioritize performance over high-end textures. Step into the shoes of the Yakuza with 30 FPS stability. This chipset captures the neon lights of Kamurocho quite well. It's a very immersive experience, but don't forget to play around with your DXVK version to find the most stable setup for this specific Sega title. The horror continues in Resident Evil 7, running at a decent 30 to 40 FPS. Exploring the Baker Mansion on this hardware feels genuinely spooky and smooth. Try experimenting with your shader cache to avoid any small stutters when entering new rooms or starting cutscenes. Prototype is all about feeling like an unstoppable monster, and it hits 60 FPS on this silicon. Moving through the city is incredibly fast and fluid. To maintain this top-tier performance, make sure your device stays cool so the emulator can utilize the full power of the chip. Far Cry 2. Fortune's Edition looks great and runs at a perfect 60 FPS. The African Savannah is handled beautifully by this processor. For the best fire effects and shooting mechanics, adjust your rendering mode to ensure the physics engine stays synced with the high frame rate. Sleeping Dogs Definitive Edition offers a much more detailed Hong Kong at 50 FPS. This hardware really steps up for this version of the game. To keep the martial arts combat feeling tight, don't hesitate to optimize your input settings for the most responsive experience. Relive the Borgia conflict in Assassin's Creed Brotherhood at a steady 30 FPS. This chipset manages the busy crowds and historical landmarks of Rome quite well. Be sure to tweak your environment variables to find the perfect balance for Ezio's parkour and stealth kills. Prototype 2 is a bit more demanding, but still hits a very playable 40 to 60 FPS. This processor handles the viral chaos surprisingly well. To keep the frame rate on the higher end, try lowering the shadow quality in the game's internal settings for a smoother ride. Resident Evil 6 brings global action at a stable 30 FPS. This hardware keeps the cinematic shooting sequences feeling consistent throughout the campaign. Finding the right balance in your container setup will definitely help in those intense co-op boss fights against bioterrors. Spider-Man Web of Shadows is a heavy title, running at about 20 FPS on this silicon. It's a bit of a struggle for the open-world swinging. You might need to drop your resolution scale significantly to make the combat feel a little more responsive while fighting across the city. The Forest is quite a challenge for this processor, hitting only 10 to 20 FPS. Survival is a bit of a crawl here. To make your time on the island more manageable, you'll definitely want to use the lowest possible settings and perhaps some performance mods to boost the speed. The Amazing Spider-Man 2 swings by with a playable 20 FPS. This chipset works hard to render the busy New York streets. To get a bit more fluidity while soaring through the air, be sure to adjust your rendering resolution to give the GPU some much-needed breathing room. Left 4 Dead 2 is surprisingly heavy on the emulator, running at around 20 FPS. Surviving the zombie apocalypse on this hardware could be a bit chunky. Try tweaking your CPU configuration to help the chip handle the high entity count of the zombie hordes more effectively. Rise of the Tomb Raider is a massive jump in graphics, and it shows with 10 to 20 FPS. This silicon is being pushed to its absolute limit. Unless you drastically lower the resolution, this one is mostly a benchmark to show what the chip can technically load. Tekken 7 brings the King of Iron Fist tournament at a playable 20 FPS. This processor handles the Unreal Engine visuals okay, but it's a bit slow for a fighter. Experiment with different rendering modes to see if you can squeeze out a few more frames for better reaction times. Call of Juarez. The Cartel offers some Wild West action in a modern setting at 20 FPS. This hardware keeps the gunfights decent enough to enjoy. To avoid any sudden dips, don't forget to optimize your system driver settings within GameHub before starting your mission. Way of the Samurai 3 is a unique experience that runs at a stable 20 FPS. This chipset captures the atmosphere of feudal Japan quite well. To make your swordplay feel more accurate, try adjusting your emulator's input lag settings for a more responsive combat feel. Far Cry 3 takes us back to the Rook Islands at solid 30 FPS. This processor does a great job with the tropical environments. To keep the action fluid while taking over outposts, be sure to fine-tune your box 64 presets to get the best performance from the emulator. Dark Souls 2 is surprisingly well optimized, running at 30 to 40 FPS on the silicon. Dying has never been so smooth. To ensure you don't miss those crucial parry windows, make sure to prioritize your frame pacing settings in the GameHub configuration menu. That's a wrap for our 30-game marathon on the Helio G100. Honestly, for a chipset in this class, seeing games like Tomb Raider hit 60 FPS is absolutely wild. It just goes to show how much you can achieve with the right GameHub settings, even without custom drivers. Which game's performance surprised you the most today? Let me know in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Vanzee Gaming for more emulation content. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.